Now you can use real-time sensors to get information from every part of the farm, from the soil, from the water, from the weather, from the crop itself is now speaking to plant breeders, right, in real time. And so it's really going to be profound.
Today, we're diving into one of the most critical and urgent challenges of our time, feeding the world.
We're talking about edge computing on farms, about AI that forecasts harvests, and about networks that route food in real time. Hunger is becoming less about scarcity and more about infrastructure coordination. Our big question is, what does it take to build the infrastructure and systems that can feed the world?
We're joined by Christine Gould, a global leader in agri-food innovation. As founder of Thought for Food, Christine built the largest and most diverse innovator community in food and agriculture, reaching 30,000 next-gen talents in over 180 countries. So Christine, it's a real pleasure to have you here on the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me, and let's dive into the conversation.
Awesome to see you, Christine. So let's tell us about the current state of agriculture in the world right now. What's the state of this global, vitally important industry?
Yeah, I mean, it is actually the world's most important industry, responsible for feeding 8 billion people, ideally multiple times a day. But what's really kind of fascinating about this industry is that it's running on a 20th century operating model, but in a risk environment that is very much 21st century. We're seeing food insecurity affecting every region. We're really faced with some big, big challenges to overcome.
Wow, so it's sad for me to hear that it sounds like it could be getting worse, the food insecurity around the world, and yet it feels like so many individuals and organizations have been putting focus on this. So have I interpreted that correctly? Is it getting worse or at least not getting better?
Actually, I mean, you're right. We've seen some progress over the past decade in terms of some of those macro indicators like hunger and malnutrition. But really, since the pandemic, things have been getting worse for many people. In that, we're seeing climate shocks affecting yields all over the world and is creating hardship for farmers. But we're also just seeing kind of the fact that many people are unable to even access food and this rise of malnutrition, which is impacting every region, not just developing countries. So these are all things that we need to be paying attention to. And it's a all hands on deck kind of opportunity. And that's what is exciting. By taking action to fix our food systems, people estimate that there's a 4.5 trillion economic opportunity, but it's very complex, it's very fragmented. So, what to do, how to do it, those are challenges that we all need to be focused on. But it's different than, other sectors where kind of like a one size fits all intervention can have these profound effects. We need a variety of different types of solutions when it comes to food and agriculture.
And there's this uniqueness, I think, to agriculture. It's like a bifurcation within the industry. There's a split between big ag and smaller farmers. Can you help us understand what percentage of global food production comes from big agriculture versus rural farms? Or how does this split affect individual farms and worldwide modernization?
Yeah, it's a great question and a great insight. I mean, I've actually spent my life in both sides of this bifurcation that you mentioned. What's interesting is you do have this like big ag version of agriculture, which is, is something like you have 1% of farms owning like 70% of the world's farmland, mainly growing commodity crops, things like corn, soy, and wheat, which primarily corn and soy especially go into animal feed. You're seeing a lot of investment in automation and digital technologies. But then on the flip side, you have this version of agriculture, which is smallholder agriculture or family farming. There's about 600 million smallholder farms around the world, and those are farms under 2 hectares. They make, up the majority of the world's farmers, but actually comprise a sliver of the land that's dedicated to farming in comparison to like those big concentrated farms. Unfortunately, a lot of those farms are actually digitally excluded, and they're actually not prioritized usually in the innovation agendas of the big companies. But what we're seeing actually is a wake-up call, like a turmoil around globalized supply chains. So what you're seeing is actually more people focusing on local food security, national food security, and here's where small farmers are going to actually play a bigger role going forward to make sure that, we have food production closer to where it's needed. And this resiliency aspect is going to become the word of the decade, in my opinion. It's really what we need to be designing for. And with that comes the opportunity for more decentralization and more focus on these small farms and how to bring them into the fold.
You said that the food insecurity is not just in developing countries. And then we talked a little bit about these two pieces, these smaller farms and the bigger businesses. I'm curious about how does the digital piece kind of fall into fixing that?
I mean, for me, digital is the great enabler, right? We have so many technologies at our fingertips right now, whether that be apps that can connect any farmer truly to markets, whether that be R&D that we're doing to make crops more productive or to develop new biological crop inputs, or whether that be linking supply and demand to reduce food loss and waste or logistics channels. That'll be the great unlock, right? To make all of these things possible and accelerated and to reach more people. We need to build that enabling layer, which is digital infrastructure, so that, farmers can access these tools, but also, everyone everywhere, so they can be part of building the solutions that's needed to transform food systems. So we can unlock that 4.5 trillion economic opportunity that's right for the taking by people who can get involved.
Can you help us understand maybe where some of the best digital investment is occurring in the agricultural industry, or some really great examples and use cases where the food supply chain has been advanced because of digital innovation?
Yeah, I mean, a few examples come to mind. One is, of course, the United States, which has really taken initiative to bring rural areas into broadband and modern digital connectivity. But then in other parts of the world, like let's take China, right? They've really gone in on like digital infrastructure to connect rural communities to opportunities for financial mechanisms, as well as for market information. Really interesting. I was just in Ethiopia chatting with a guy from Safaricom, one of their mobile providers, right? And they were actually providing microloans, via mobile phones to small farmers.
And those microloans are going specifically into digital investments for those farmers?
Exactly. It de-risks the investments, right? Because you're actually giving information that makes the farmers more productive, gives them the information they need to manage risks, whether that be weather risks, and market information so they can optimize, their selling. And so it's a really smart model. You're de-risking your loans and bringing, previously unbankable parts of the system into, bankable solutions that unlock this big opportunity to solve our big food security challenges.
Yeah, that's super interesting. You named a couple of examples and also cited kind of the effect that government and policy have on these types of investments. Could you say maybe a little bit more about the barriers outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this is a full court press. There's a terminology that is often mentioned when it comes to digital solutions in food and ag, and that's the reality of the digital divide. In many parts of the world, especially in emerging markets, the average age of the world's farmer is over 60 years old. So they're not as savvy with digital tools that young people, are astute at using. You also have a cultural digital divide. And that's the case for food systems that are based on traditional knowledge or indigenous knowledge, where they're actively excluding certain digital tools from the farming system. It's more based on this traditional knowledge and farmer's almanac type thinking. We have to be cognizant of this, that there's cultural elements, that there's, demographic elements, and of course, this literal element of, rural populations being excluded. It's about meeting people where they are.
In our industry, in tech in particular, you hear a lot about the digital divide and corporate impact and things like that around education, right? But it's like it's part education too, because education for the farmers at the edge.
Part of the reason I started my previous organization, Thought for Food, was actually to bring young people into the sector of agriculture, to bring their digital savviness and entrepreneurial spirit to bear in developing the solutions that we need. And what we saw was, in many parts of the world, these young people were actively encouraged by their parents and grandparents to leave the farm and pursue economic opportunities in urban areas. But once they went to study at university and learn, business concepts and entrepreneurship concepts, they actually returned to the farm and brought that digital transformation to their farming operations. And I saw this countless times. And I think that is a really exciting thing that we can do as stakeholders in the food system.
That's so fascinating and very exciting. Thank you for leading that. And so bringing that next generation into agriculture, I think, is a game changer. And so that's very inspiring that you're able to do that. I want to transition us and change gears, talk a little bit about specific technology. It's hard for us to have any technology conversation right now without the concept of AI. And I'd be curious to hear from you, when you think about how distributed and how many farmers are at what we would call the edge, what's the role of AI in agriculture?
I am such an enthusiast about AI. We are living in, I think, the most exciting period in history, at the precipice of really rewriting the rules of every part of agriculture, from research and development through to, how we produce, how we process, how we distribute, and how we consume. There's so much opportunity. I talked about the fact that at the edge, right now, here and now, there's a lot of work happening with simple technologies like SMS and WhatsApp, right? But imagine a world where we can use machine learning, AI, and Gen AI to start to analyze some of that information using edge devices, which are becoming faster, cheaper, and more powerful, and then of course, linking that into cloud for even more analysis. And I think like getting that insight, really the reality is the ground truth is going to be so important. So in one of the startups I was working at before, we were using like historical data to do modeling of farms and to make predictions. Right. Now, we can use real-time sensors to get that information from every part of the farm, from the soil, from the water, from the weather, from the crop itself is now speaking, to plant breeders, right, in real time. And so it's really like going to be profound. And then diagnostics. Right now, I can take a picture of my house plant and get a diagnosis of what to do to extend its life. We should be able to do that with crops too. Any crop in any soil and any place in the world and get a right sized, right fitted recommendation of what to do. And that's going to be transformational for agriculture.
Yeah, I can sense your excitement now. It sounds like we're on the precipice of solving kind of the rural connectivity problem that has always been a major issue. Satellite technology, 5G technology, all kinds of wireless communications. That's enabling sensors in the grounds and in the fields to really help us gather the information and make the determination of what needs to happen next. And we can then stream that data back to data centers and into systems that are either powered by AI or some other type of model to make the recommendation back to the farmer and produce the crops that we need.
Absolutely. I can name you so many companies like around the world, particularly in emerging economies, that are doing exactly what you said. We've been working too with actually big companies, distribution centers. So they're aggregators of food products, and they use those to deploy into shipping or freight on airplanes or even last mile delivery, and packaging. And they're actually bringing in AI systems that can do really precise things like detect the spoilage rate of an avocado, for example.
Well, that's so unique to this industry, right? Manufacturers that sell widgets, they can be in a box for 6 years. You can't do that with food.
Yeah, right.
That is such a unique challenge for agriculture, right?
Exactly. So you have these freshness parameters, and different people demand different parameters. Like you might need an avocado for a smoothie that doesn't need to be perfect, but for another use case like guacamole, it needs to, have a different level of quality. Yeah. So not only are they using like computer vision to analyze mangoes, avocados, whatever it may be, but they're also connecting that with data about what the demand is, right? So they can get the right product to the right place at the right time at the right quality level. So you're seeing everything from hedge funds through to big CPGs building dashboards so they can figure out where they're going to get their cocoa from. And they are using AI actually to power those systems and do predictions so they can optimize their prices and make sure they have what they need when they need it.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you just said sounds like it's leverageable by the people with the most investment. Do the big firms play a role in enabling the ones at the edge?
It's a great question. And it's something that, I feel like is a big part of my role in life is to get the big companies to pay attention to these like maybe hidden business opportunities or ones that they're not currently prioritizing. I mean, I like to call them leapfrog opportunities, many of these markets and many of these smaller opportunities. How do we excite them about them and get them to notice it? I recently worked with a startup in Egypt, actually, that was developing autonomous weeding robots, but right-sized for the North Africa and Middle East market. They were specifically developed for the crops of the region and for the farm sizes of the region. But essentially, you're seeing this kind of groundswell of entrepreneurs from the places that are really feeling the problems and that are leveraging collaborative tools like the open source movement, which transformed many industries, is now being brought into agriculture. And again, you're seeing kind of this decentralization happen. Now, my big message is, hey, big companies, hey, big investors, these are your opportunities to invest.
Yeah, so the key to the future of all this includes the matchmaking that you're talking about.
Matchmaking, exactly. Exactly. And showing there's a business case. And that's another problem with agriculture. I mean, it's marred by this perception of not being, innovative or easy to change. And so now, we're seeing there's all of these digital tools available, all of these biotech tools available. And now it's matching the opportunity with the business thinking that has, kind of dominated so much of the food system to date. We built an industrial model. It works great at producing calories at scale. But now we need to move towards producing nutrition and resiliency. And that's going to take a new business model.
Yeah. One thing we didn't really get into is just the incredible uncertainty that weather brings. I mean, you can have seasons growing in the Midwest that like it just rains nonstop, and other seasons like you don't get any rain. And like, how do you adjust to that?
Even just with my local CSA farm, right? Like there was so much rain in Northern Virginia for the last, months and months and months that it completely impacted everything that they give to us every week. The ability for technology and AI in particular to be able to arm the smaller farms at the edge is super critical.
The thing is that the historical data that a lot of the yield predictions and kind of like crop models have been developed on was based on, historical data when, we had more kind of predictable weather patterns. And now everything is changing. And so we need this kind of like concept of real-time living intelligence. It can't just be based on historical data because it's outdated.
Yeah, the volatility, makes the real-time intelligence super critical. We hope that digital investment can help those farmers at the edge be able to react more adaptively.
Yeah. So speaking of painting that new narrative, like you just gave us a couple of tidbits. Like if you were to look forward 10 to 15 years from now, what's your dream for agriculture?
I think it's a decentralized, localized, digitized version of agriculture where technology is kind of in service of human needs, where we're building, flourishing, biodiverse, rich ecosystems. It's in service of us, right? I like to call artificial intelligence more like augmented intelligence, right? It should be an extension of our human creativity and should be enhancing our lives in an augmented way, not in a replacing way.
So what are the needs you hope will be addressed?
Agriculture really affects every single person everywhere on the planet. We are all part of the food system as eaters, as consumers, as innovators, as investors. So I really think it's like this is a moment where we need all hands on deck to use our power for good, to really paint a picture of what technology and digitization can do for the future and get involved. So let's do this.
Big thanks to Christine for joining us today to help us explore the current state of global agriculture and how this vital industry is innovating to feed the world.
And stay tuned for our next episode of Interconnected, where we'll look at yet another technology megatrend and how it intersects with digital infrastructure. You can find all of our episodes on our Interconnected YouTube page or wherever you find your podcasts.
To learn more about high-performance data centers and how they operate, check out these other videos.